We spend so much of our lives searching for meaning, for purpose, for proof that we are not alone in our struggles. We work hard, we push forward, and we convince ourselves that if we just do more, achieve more, or become more, then we will finally feel worthy. But what if the very thing we are searching for has been with us all along? Grace is not something you earn. It's not something you unlock after you've done everything right. It's already at work in your life, whether you see it or not, whether you feel it or not, whether you believe it or not. The problem is not that grace isn't there. The problem is that we don't always recognize it. We are so focused on what's missing, on what hasn't worked out, on the challenges we're facing, that we overlook the quiet moments where grace is present. Think about the times when you felt like giving up but found the strength to keep going. Think about the times when things didn't go as planned, but later you realized they actually worked out for your good. Think about the unexpected opportunities, the unexplainable peace, the moments of clarity that came just when you needed them most. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was grace at work. We often associate grace with the big, dramatic moments, the miracle stories, the breakthroughs, the second chances that come out of nowhere. And while grace does move in powerful ways, it's also found in the everyday moments. It's in the breath you just took. It's in the sunrise that signals a new beginning. It's in the people who show up in your life at just the right time. Grace isn't just there when things are easy. It's there when life is messy. When you feel lost, when you feel like you've failed. Grace doesn't disappear when you struggle. It meets you in the middle of it. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It embraces you exactly as you are. The problem is, we often resist grace because we think we don't deserve it. We think we have to fix ourselves first, that we have to prove we are worthy before we can receive it. But grace is not about what you've done. It's about what is being done for you, even when you don't realize it. Think about a time when you were carrying a burden you thought was too heavy, when you were overwhelmed, exhausted, and ready to give up. And then, somehow, a way was made. Maybe it wasn't the way you expected, but a door opened, an answer came, or a shift happened inside you that gave you the strength to move forward. That was grace. We don't always see it in the moment. Sometimes grace looks like unanswered prayers. Sometimes it looks like redirection. Sometimes it looks like a delay that doesn't make sense at the time, but later when you look back, you realize that grace was present all along, guiding you, protecting you, preparing you for something greater. The challenge is not whether grace is working in your life, it is. The challenge is whether you will choose to see it. Whether you will stop chasing what you already have, whether you will open your eyes and recognize that grace is not waiting for you in the future. It's already here. It always has been. There are moments in life when it feels like no one truly understands what you're going through. Moments when the weight of your struggles is too heavy to carry, and no matter how many people surround you, loneliness creeps in. It's easy to believe that you have to handle everything on your own, that no one else could possibly know the depth of what you're feeling. But the truth is, you are not alone. Loneliness is not just about being physically by yourself. You can be in a crowded room and still feel isolated. You can have people who love you and still feel like no one sees what's really happening inside of you. Because loneliness isn't just about the presence of others. It's about the belief that no one understands, that no one truly cares, that no one is walking this journey with you. But that belief is not the truth. There is a grace that has never left your side. There is a presence that has walked with you through every dark moment, every tear, every fear, every doubt. You may not always feel it, but it has always been there. You have never taken a single step alone. Think back to the hardest moments of your life. The moments when you thought you wouldn't make it through. The moments when you felt like everything was falling apart. And yet, here you are. You made it. Maybe bruised, maybe broken, maybe still trying to heal, but you made it. And that is proof that you were never alone. Because if you were, you wouldn't have had the strength to keep going. Sometimes we mistake silence for absence. When we don't hear the answer we want, when we don't see the change we're praying for, we assume that we have been forgotten. But grace doesn't always shout, it often whispers. It speaks in the quiet moments, in the unexpected kindness of a stranger, in the peace that comes when you least expect it, in the small reminders that you are still here for a reason. We often carry burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. We convince ourselves that we have to be strong all the time, that we have to figure everything out, that we can't let anyone see our struggles. But strength is not about pretending you don't need help. Strength is knowing that you don't have to do this by yourself. You were never meant to walk this path alone. The weight you feel on your shoulders is not just yours to carry. Grace is already holding what you think is impossible. Even in the moments when you feel abandoned, you are being held. Even when you don't understand what's happening, you are being guided. The problem isn't that you are alone. The problem is that you've convinced yourself you are. That you've believed the lie that no one sees you, that no one hears you, that no one understands. But if you would just open your eyes, you would see that help has been there all along. Look at your life. Look at the moments when hope came when you least expected it. Look at the times when you thought all was lost, and yet someone showed up in a way you didn't anticipate. That was not an accident. That was not a coincidence. You are not alone, and you never have been. The question is not whether you are being supported. The question is whether you will choose to see it. Whether you will let go of the belief that you have to do this by yourself. Whether you will open your heart to the truth that you are seen, you are known, and you are deeply loved. Life is not just about what happens to you, it's about how you see it. Two people can go through the exact same situation, but their experiences can be completely different. Not because of what happened, but because of how they chose to see it. Perspective is powerful. It can turn obstacles into opportunities, pain into growth, and setbacks into setups for something greater. But the challenge is, we don't always realize that we have control over it. We assume that life happens, and we simply react. But what if the way you see a situation is just as important as the situation itself? Think about a time in your life when something didn't go the way you planned. Maybe you lost a job, went through a breakup, or faced a challenge that felt impossible to overcome. In the moment, it probably felt unfair. It probably felt like a failure. But now, looking back, do you see it differently? Did that loss lead you to something better? Did that closed door redirect you to an opportunity you wouldn't have considered otherwise? Did that pain teach you something that made you stronger? The situation didn't change, your perspective did. We spend so much time fighting what is instead of shifting how we see it. We resist, we complain, we focus on what's wrong instead of asking, what can this teach me? How can this make me better? What if this is happening for me instead of to me? Because the truth is, there is no situation in life that is purely good or purely bad. It is always about what we choose to do with it. The same storm that destroys one person's home can be the rain that ends another person's drought. The same rejection that feels like an ending can actually be a redirection to something better. The same hardship that feels unbearable can be the thing that builds the resilience you need for the next season of your life. Perspective isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to see beyond the immediate struggle. It's about believing that even in the worst moments, there is something to be gained. And the people who understand this, the ones who don't just see problems but possibilities, those are the ones who rise. There's a reason why some of the most successful, impactful people in the world have stories filled with adversity. It's not because life was easier for them. It's because they refused to let their struggles define them. They didn't ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, how can this serve me? The moment you shift your perspective, everything changes. Challenges become opportunities. Failures become lessons. Delays become preparation. And instead of living in frustration, you start living in curiosity. Instead of assuming the worst, you start looking for the best. Because what you focus on grows. If you focus on everything that's going wrong, you'll find more reasons to feel defeated. But if you focus on growth, on possibility, on learning, you'll find reasons to keep moving forward. The choice is always yours. You can see the struggle, or you can see the strength it's building in you. You can see the failure, or you can see the wisdom it's giving you. You can see the closed door, or you can trust that something better is on the way. The situation may not change overnight, but the way you see it can. And when you change the way you see things, the things you see begin to change. Failure, it's a word we fear, a feeling we try to avoid at all costs. From a young age, we are taught that failure is something to be ashamed of, something that defines our worth, something that means we weren't good enough. But what if we've been looking at failure all wrong? What if failure isn't the end of the road, but the beginning of something greater? What if the moments you thought were your biggest defeats were actually preparing you for your biggest victories? What if failure isn't proof that you're not capable, but proof that you're in the process of growth? Every person who has ever achieved something great has also experienced failure. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck is not the absence of failure, it's the willingness to see failure as part of the journey, not the end of it. Think about it. Every time you failed, every time something didn't go your way, you had two choices: to let it define you or to let it refine you, to see it as the end or to see it as the lesson you needed to move forward. The problem is we often take failure personally. We think, I failed, so I must be a failure. But failure is not an identity. It is an experience. It is a moment. It is a single chapter, not the whole story. History is filled with people who failed, people who were told no, people who were rejected, people who were knocked down over and over again. But instead of giving up, they chose to rise. Thomas Edison, the man who invented the light bulb, failed over 1,000 times before he got it right. Imagine if he had stopped at attempt 999. Imagine if he had decided that failure meant he wasn't meant to succeed, but he didn't. Instead, he said, I have not failed, I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work. J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, was rejected by 12 publishers before one finally gave her a chance. Imagine if she had stopped at rejection number 11. Imagine if she had believed the voices that told her she wasn't good enough. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, was cut from his high school basketball team. He could have let that moment define him. Instead, he let it fuel him. He trained harder, worked longer, and became one of the most iconic athletes in history. The difference between these people and the ones who give up is not talent. It's not luck. It's not even intelligence. It's the understanding that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Every failure is a lesson. Every rejection is redirection. Every setback is a setup for a comeback, but only if you refuse to quit. Only if you choose to see failure as feedback instead of finality. The truth is, failure only becomes final when you stop trying. The moment you decide to get back up, the moment you choose to learn, the moment you say, this is not how my story ends, that is the moment failure loses its power. Failure is painful, yes? It stings, it disappoints, it humbles you, but it also teaches you, it strengthens you, it shapes you. And if you let it, it will make you better than you were before. The road to success is never a straight path. It is filled with detours, roadblocks, and failures that will test your commitment, your patience, and your belief in yourself. But if you can push through, if you can rise after every fall, you will discover something powerful. Failure was never meant to stop you. It was meant to build you. We live in a world that values speed. We set goals, make plans, and expect things to happen on our timeline. When they don't, we feel frustrated, defeated, or even forgotten. Delays make us anxious. Detours make us question if we're on the right path at all. But what if the delays aren't failures? What if the detours aren't mistakes? What if they are grace in disguise? It's hard to see it when you're in the middle of the waiting, when you've worked for something, prayed for something, done everything in your power, and still nothing seems to be happening. The door remains closed. The opportunity doesn't come. The path forward isn't clear. And in those moments, it's easy to believe that something is wrong, that you've missed your chance, or that life is unfair. But what if the delay is actually protection? What if the detour is actually leading you somewhere better than you originally planned? We tend to believe that success and fulfillment happen in a straight line, that if we just do the right things, everything will fall into place exactly when and how we expect. But life doesn't work that way. The path is never as direct as we think it should be, and when things don't happen on our schedule, we assume that something has gone wrong. But sometimes what looks like a setback is actually a setup. Sometimes the door that didn't open was never meant to, because something greater is waiting down the road. Sometimes the things we see as obstacles are actually moments of grace, redirecting us away from something that wasn't right for us or preparing us for what's ahead. Think about a time in your life when something didn't go the way you planned. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that didn't work out, an opportunity that slipped through your fingers. At the time, it felt like a disappointment, but looking back, can you see how it led you to something better? Can you see how what you thought was a delay was actually grace moving in your life? We don't always get to see the full picture in the moment. We don't always understand why certain things happen or don't happen until later. And that's where trust comes in. Trust that just because you can't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. Trust that just because you feel stuck doesn't mean you're not being positioned for something greater. Trust that sometimes the waiting is where the most important growth happens. There is grace in the waiting. There is grace in the unanswered prayers. There is grace in the closed doors. Because sometimes what we think we want is not what we actually need. Sometimes if we got what we were asking for when we wanted it, we wouldn't be ready to handle it. And sometimes the timing we think is perfect is nothing compared to the timing that has been set for us. Delays teach us patience. They remind us that we are not in control of everything, and that's okay. They teach us to rely not on our own understanding, but on a bigger plan that is unfolding even when we can't see it. Detours teach us flexibility. They force us to let go of our rigid expectations and open our hearts to new possibilities. They remind us that sometimes the path we didn't plan is the one that leads us exactly where we need to be. Every delay, every detour, every unexpected turn is part of a bigger picture. One that we may not understand in the moment, but one that is always working for our good. The question is, will you fight the delay, or will you trust that grace is still at work? Will you resist the detour, or will you open your heart to the possibility that you are being led somewhere better? We spend so much of our lives trying to control everything. We make plans, set goals, and map out how we think our lives should unfold. We convince ourselves that if we just work harder, push more, and hold on tighter, then everything will go exactly the way we want. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when the plan falls apart, when the outcome isn't what we expected, when, despite our best efforts, things don't go our way? That's when we start to feel frustrated, anxious, and afraid. Because deep down, we believe that control equals security, that if we just hold on tight enough, we can prevent pain, avoid failure, and keep our world in order. But the truth is, control is an illusion. No matter how much we plan, life is unpredictable. No matter how tightly we grip, things will sometimes slip through our fingers. And the more we try to control everything, the more we realize how little control we actually have. But here's the thing, letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean we stop trying, stop working, or stop pursuing our goals. It means releasing the need to force things. It means surrendering the belief that our way is the only way. It means understanding that sometimes what we think we need isn't what's best for us. Think about a time in your life when things didn't go according to plan. Maybe you lost an opportunity you thought was meant for you. Maybe a relationship ended when you least expected it. Maybe you worked hard for something only to see it slip away. In those moments, it's easy to feel defeated. But looking back, can you see how those situations led you somewhere else? Can you see how even in the disappointment, you were being redirected to something different? Something you may not have chosen, but something that ultimately shaped you in ways you never expected. Letting go of control is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of trust. It's the understanding that you are not meant to carry the weight of everything on your shoulders. It's realizing that there is grace at work in your life, even when you don't see it. That just because things aren't happening the way you planned doesn't mean they aren't happening the way they are meant to. We've all had moments where we've forced something, where we've held on to something long past its time, where we've pushed so hard to make something happen that we exhausted ourselves in the process. And more often than not, those situations didn't turn out the way we wanted. Because when we operate from a place of fear, fear of losing control, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, we limit ourselves, we close ourselves off to possibilities beyond what we can see. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we stop working. It means we stop striving out of fear. It means we stop trying to force something that isn't meant for us. It means we trust that even in uncertainty, we are being guided. It's in the moments when we release our grip that we create space for something greater. It's in the surrender that we find peace. Because when we finally let go, we realize we were never in control to begin with. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. We often think that life is defined by big moments, the major milestones, the breakthroughs, the achievements. We wait for those moments, believing they are what truly shape us. The promotion, the graduation, the dream opportunity, the big victory. But the truth is, life isn't made up of just those big moments. Life is built in the small ones. The small moments, the ones we barely notice, are the ones that shape our character, build our resilience, and create the story of who we become. The early mornings when you choose to keep going even when no one is watching. The quiet decisions to show up for someone else even when it's inconvenient. The small acts of kindness that seem insignificant but leave an impact far greater than you realize. We get so focused on the big picture that we overlook the power of the little things. But what if the small moments are actually the most important ones? What if the way we handle the small, unseen moments is what prepares us for the big ones? Think about the people you admire, the ones who have built something meaningful, the ones who seem to carry wisdom and strength. They didn't get there overnight. Their success, their impact, their influence, it was built in the small, unseen moments, the late nights, the early mornings, the choices they made when no one was watching. It's easy to believe that the little things don't matter, that skipping a workout here and there, missing one commitment, or choosing comfort over consistency won't make a difference. But success or failure rarely happens in a single moment. It's built over time, in the habits we create, in the discipline we develop, in the seemingly insignificant decisions we make every day. Think about a drop of water hitting a rock. One drop does nothing. 10 drops barely make a difference. But over time, with consistency, those drops wear away at the rock, not because of their size, but because of their persistence. That's how change happens. That's how growth happens, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the daily choices we make over and over again. Small moments also matter in the way we treat people. A kind word to a stranger, a moment of patience when you could have responded with frustration, a decision to listen instead of interrupt. These moments might seem small, but they can change someone's entire day, sometimes even their entire life. We don't always get to see the impact of the small things right away. We plant seeds, and it takes time to see them grow. But just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean they don't matter. The moments of effort, the moments of kindness, the moments of discipline, they are shaping something bigger than you can imagine. So often we chase after the extraordinary and overlook the significance of the ordinary. But life isn't just about the big wins, the big breakthroughs, the big moments. It's about how we show up in the small ones. Because those small moments, they are what prepare us for the big ones. They are what determine who we become. They are what shape the life we build, one choice, one action, one moment at a time. So many of us go through life guarded. We build walls to protect ourselves from disappointment, rejection, and pain. We convince ourselves that if we stay in control, if we keep our expectations low, if we never get too attached, then maybe, just maybe, we won't get hurt. But in doing so, we also close ourselves off from the very things that make life meaningful. Living with an open heart is not about being naive. It's not about ignoring the realities of the world or pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about choosing to show up fully, to engage with life completely, and to embrace the experiences that shape us, even when there are no guarantees. An open heart is willing to love, even when there is a risk of loss. It is willing to trust, even when the past has given reasons to be cautious. It is willing to believe in the good, even when the bad seems overwhelming. And this is not always easy. It is far simpler to stay guarded, to keep people at a distance, to live in a way that minimizes vulnerability. But the problem with a closed heart is that while it may protect you from pain, it also keeps you from experiencing joy in its fullest form. Think about the moments that have mattered most in your life, the relationships that have shaped you, the experiences that have changed you, the opportunities that have opened doors you never expected. Were those moments safe? Were they predictable, or were they the result of stepping into something uncertain, of allowing yourself to be fully present, of choosing connection over comfort? Living with an open heart means understanding that not every relationship will last forever, but choosing to love deeply anyway. It means knowing that trust can be broken, but choosing to trust anyway. It means recognizing that life will not always go the way we planned, but embracing it fully anyway. Fear tells us to close off. It tells us to retreat, to harden, to expect the worst so we won't be disappointed. But an open heart understands that even when things don't go as planned, even when love is lost, even when trust is broken, there is still something to be gained. Every experience, even the painful ones, shape us. Every person we encounter leaves something with us. Every moment, whether joyful or challenging, has the power to teach us something valuable. An open heart doesn't just apply to how we love others, it also applies to how we live. It means being open to new experiences, new perspectives, new possibilities. It means not letting past failures keep us from trying again. It means not allowing fear to dictate our choices. How many times have we missed out on something beautiful because we were afraid? How many opportunities have passed us by because we hesitated, because we doubted, because we chose the comfort of the known over the uncertainty of the unknown? An open heart says yes. It leans into life rather than resisting it. It embraces change rather than fearing it. It is easy to be cynical. It is easy to believe that life is unfair, that people cannot be trusted, that love is too risky. But the people who live with the most fulfillment, the people who leave the greatest impact, are the ones who choose openness over fear. They are the ones who dare to care deeply, to live fully, to believe in something greater than themselves. There is strength in vulnerability, there is power in openness. And when we choose to live with an open heart, we don't just experience life, we allow ourselves to be transformed by it.